Hello friends, today's topic of discussion is visual expressions, folk art, calendar art and photography. In the earlier lessons and talks with regard to understanding popular culture, which is the series which we have done earlier, it is one of the lectures of that particular series, Understanding Popular Culture, and how visual expressions have been an important concern in the Indian culture as well. And we have seen that how folk art, calendar art and photography, all of them, they have played an important role in terms of not only historically recording the events of the past, but at the same time they are also concerned with the cultural history as well. So in this series we will talk about the various kinds of folk arts which are there in different parts of India, and how these arts, they have been inspired by the earlier times, the kind of traditions which have been there, and how they have succeeded from one generation to another because of the efforts of the people, those who have been consistently involved in these kinds of art forms. Then when you talk about the calendar art, we find that it was comparatively recent, and in the case of calendar art, when they became popular, we find especially in the 18th-19th century where we find the calendar art, and how it was also connected to the issues of unity in diversity, nationhood in the later times. Then photography, for example, is another very important visual expression where we find that the fascination of the masses with their own portraits or own photographs which was there, and which is reflected in today's selfie culture as well, where we find that people, how they are in a way concerned with the selfie culture as well. Some of the readings which one can refer is Women's News Network, June 5, 2013, 20th Century Pop Calendar Art brought ancient storytelling to everyday India. Then A. Mukherjee, Changing Vogue of Calendar Art among Middle Class in Urban India. Then Importance of Photography, and then www.paul-mellison-center.ac.uk. Apart from that, one can also refer to the source material of the School of Open Learning of Delhi University, which also talks about various kinds of important concern with regard to this particular paper. We also see that how folk art over a period of time passes from one generation to another. That is an important concern, because we also see that also it is part of the Indian tradition and culture as well. And over a period of time, many of the art forms, some of them they survived and advanced, but some of them they vanished too. And we find that the ancient art forms which modified in colors and styles and still surviving, some of them in the society with their unique structures as well. And how the artists, they adopted themes from the epics and gods and goddesses, etc. they were being shown. And in the olden days we find that the artists used the natural colors, mud, charcoal and leaves. They painted on canvas and cloth to bring antiquity to art. So how culture is very important in this context of the folk art, and how they pass on from one generation to another, that is another very important kind of concern in the folk art. And as we have seen that over a period of time, how the folk art also is trying to communicate the various kinds of messages which are there in the society, because it is closely associated to that particular culture and society. So in that sense, it is in a way trying to communicate some of the important maybe sometimes social messages or cultural messages or economic messages which are there in that particular society. And it also reflects the kind of talent, the kind of potential which is there in the society with regard to art. And we find that in many of the societies, floor decoration is one of the most popular forms for art in any culture all over the world. And especially in the case of India, we find that in different kinds of mediums it could be found, whether Alpana, Rangoli, Kolam, Sanji, etc. All these kinds of art, they are connected with floor, and Kolam is the most important part in the cultural and religious festivals of South India. And we find that kolam, like other floor decorative arts of India, is a symbol of fortune as well, that how it is being connected to the fortune, and the designs and the motives, they are traditional in nature, and these are both floral as well as geometrical in nature. So we find that this kind of floor art is there, and it is known in different kinds of names in different parts of India, and how people, they also associate it in the form of fortune as well. And we find that during the times of festival in different parts of India, this kind of floor art is being done in different houses by the people, those who are living in those houses, especially women and children as well, they also get involved. And such kind of things which are being done, which are also connected to home as well as they are part of culture, and how these kinds of art, they become some kind of a symbolic to that particular society or culture as well. Then we also find fulkari, which means the flowered work, and how this term is used for a type of embroidery which is practiced by folk women in Punjab, and these are done on small and large cloth pieces, and these are used for different purposes like veils to cover heads, then garment pieces, chadar and white bedspreads or bed covers, and how the embroidery is worked in floss silk upon coarse cotton cloth, and darning switch over countless threads being worked from back of fabric. So in this way we find that such kind of patterns which were being done in Punjab in a particular region, and how it got associated with that particular culture as well. And in different regions of India, we find that various kinds of folk traditions in the framework of folk art could be found. For example, Bengal has a delightful folk tradition of embroidery and quilting known as kantha. And kanthas, they are made of discarded saris and dhotis, and these are sewn together to make it thick. And they are being made by women of all classes in Bengal, particularly the old women. And how they use their spare time to sew these kanthas by colored threads from border of old saris, and are stitched along borderline and surface, and is filled with various designs. So we find that how the people, those who are from older generation, those who are old in that sense, they are also being connected in some kind of a productive work where they are producing kantha, which is very, very popular among the women folk of different parts of India, because these kinds of specializations which are being created by the artists in that particular region, they are also being liked, or they are being treasured by the women, those who are living in other parts of India, because such kind of embroidery, such kind of art which is available in kantha is in a way liked by so many women, for example, in different parts of India, and how they also not only cater to the women's dresses, but at the same time they are also connected to the home items, as we talked about in the context of the bed covers or the chadar, which is the bed sheet. So these kinds of things which are being done, they are not only in a way connected to art and culture, but at the same time they are also generating some kind of a money to the people, those who are involved in these kinds of arts and crafts. Then we also see that how in different parts of India various kinds of paintings, etc., they became popular over a period of time. For example, Madhubani is one of the folk art traditions of Mithila region, presently situated in Bihar, and it is believed that Mithila kingdom was ruled by King Janak, who was the father of Sita. And mostly women, they practice this art in Mithila region, and this art form is mostly decorated on walls of the huts. So we find that how these kinds of paintings, they are not only in a way located in the framework of a particular region, and they are not only seen as folk art in that sense, because in the modern times we find that they have some kind of a universal popularity, and the people not only from India but even from other parts of the world, they are very well aware about such kind of traditions with regard to the paintings which are there. And it is also being suggested that how the Mithila kingdom was also associated with these kinds of regions of Mithila of the present times, which is located in Bihar. So in that sense, we find that the issue of religion in the framework of that the place was of Sita, who was a central figure in that sense in the epic Ramayana. So in that sense, we find that such kind of things, they are also in a way connected not only to history, culture, but at the same time they are also trying to communicate the specialities of that particular region as well. And we find that how women, when we say that they practice this kind of an art, then we find that they are also in a way engaged in some kind of another vocation for themselves. And as I told you that how it is mostly decorated on the walls of hut, and we also see that most of the art forms are in the mural shape with the subject of flora and fauna and god figures. And the painting is generally done by hand on a plastered wall or on a mud wall, but commercial demand is bringing paintings to paper and cloth as well. So this kind of a diversification, where we find that earlier the art was related to the walls, but over a period of time how it is also being shifted to paper and cloth as well. So this kind of a change, keeping in mind the kind of demand which is there in that sense, or in the context of the commercial demands of the market, could also be seen. Then we see, apart from Madhubani which is there in Bihar, Madhubani paintings, we also find that in other regions of India like Fard art, which is the traditional art of Rajasthan. The Fard artists, they paint the religious form of the folk deities, Pabuji and Devanarayanji, and these paintings are in large size and use high canvas or cloth. And how the artists, they use the natural vegetable colors and characterized heroic deeds of deities. So in a way, how the art is also related to the religious forms and the various kinds of folk deities which have become popular over a period of time, like Pabuji and Devanarayanji we talked about. And these kinds of paintings, they are being made in large size, and the usage of the natural colors is also an important characteristic of these paintings, which are in not only portraying the heroic deeds of the deities as well. Apart from that, we also see the different kinds of artistic activities are found in the framework of the folk art in the different regions of India. And when we talk about the one of the arts in the tribals of Maharashtra, where we find the Varli art, which is practiced today, and Varli art is the finest tradition of Indian folk art, and how the artists, they use their clay huts as backdrop for their paintings, and the artists, they use the basic geometric shapes of circle, triangle and a square. And in these paintings we find that they are being painted on the concept of Mother Nature and the elements of nature as their focal point. So in this context, we find that how the different kinds of arts which are being practiced in the different states of India, one of them, when we talked about the Varli art, we find that such kind of art is not only concerned with that particular region, but over a period of time it gains a lot of popularity, not only in India but in the framework at the international level as well. Then we find that especially in this art, how these kinds of paintings, they are connected to the Mother Nature, and the elements of nature, they are being depicted in these particular paintings. And we also find that the various kinds of ritual paintings which are being made here, the festivals and the dances, they are depicted as common scenes. And so these kinds of festivals and dances, they are also reflecting the culture of that particular area. And we find that these kinds of paintings, they were also painted with the mixture of rice flour, water and gum on red ochre background. So when you talk about such kind of paintings, especially the Varli paintings as we are talking about, we find that the connection with nature is very, very important. And nowadays, when we talk about the kind of changes which have come over a period of time, then we find that they are not being painted on ritual purpose, but because of the artistic pursuit as well. And we find that how these paintings which were there earlier times, which were not connected with the paper and the cloth, but in the modern times they have also been concerned or connected with the paper and cloth as well. Then when we talk about the other regional traditions of different places in India and how these kinds of traditions, they have gained a lot of currency among the people of India as well as abroad, then we find that such kind of folk art like Kalamkari art tradition, it is practiced in Machilipatnam and Srikalahasti in the state of Andhra. And Kalamkari is a Persian word. Kalam means pen and Kari means craftsmanship. And the colors, they are being prepared naturally with the leaves, vegetables and other natural sources. And the artists, they use one type of pen to bring unique pictures. So we find that the different kinds of characteristics of these particular paintings, where we find that how a pen or a kalam is being used in terms of creating this kind of a craftsmanship by the artists, and how they are also in sync with the environment, where we find that how natural leaves and vegetables and other natural resources, they are being used in that sense to make colors for these kinds of paintings. We also find that in different parts of India, such kind of traditions, they not only try to convey the importance of these art forms, but at the same time it is also trying to communicate the diversity of India, in that sense that in different regions of India we are able to locate different kinds of art forms. One of them in this particular context was the block printing style, which was followed by the artists in Machilipatnam, and artists from Srikalahasti are following the art drawing with pen on fabric. It is in the context of the Kalamkari tradition which is there, and the art objects are the flora and fauna. In Srikalahasti, artists, they adopt themes from the epic events as well. So we find that all these kinds of art traditions, they are trying to communicate the importance of the Indian cultural traditions and how these traditions, they developed over a period of time, and the kind of changes which came in these traditions, keeping in mind the changes which were coming in the society. So how the art also had to adapt itself so that it survives, keeping in mind the changing situation at different points of time, and how when these kinds of changes came in these kinds of art forms, they were being readily accepted by the people, because the acceptance of the people was an important concern, and then only these kinds of artworks, they could have flourished the way they flourished. Then we also talk about the Thanjavur Nayakas of Tamil Nadu, how they gave patronage to flourish Tanjore art forms, and the paintings which were made on the wooden planks, they depicted the devotion towards the gods and the goddesses. So in that sense, art form is the combination of the Maratha, Deccan and the European style in the case of Thanjavur Nayakas of Tamil Nadu. So we find that when all different kinds of traditions they come together, then they also try to convey the kind of blending, the kind of changes which the artists, they are ready to make, and this kind of a synthesis of different kinds of themes, etc., they also enrich these kinds of art forms as well, because they are also being made keeping in mind the kind of changes which are happening in the society. One of the important art forms in the framework of the folk art is the Kalighat paintings, and how this painting style, it originated in 19th century at Kalighat, West Bengal. And we find that at first the artists, they adopted the themes from the Hindu epics. Later the artists, they concentrated on the social reform subjects. They use squirrel hair brushes to apply colors, and artists, they use cheap paper and color pigments. And the purpose of the paintings is to raise the awareness about the social conditions. So we find that how the painting styles, they are not only related to the folk art, but at the same time they are also connected with the social conditions of their time, because Kalighat paintings, they are trying to in a way raise the awareness about the social conditions. And we also find when you talk about such kind of paintings, how they initially adopted from the Hindu epics, and thereafter the social reform theme was an important concern of these paintings. And when you talk about the purpose of these paintings, and when they are trying to in a way create awareness about the social conditions of the masses, then it is an important concern of the folk art as well, because folk art is very immediate to the people, because people can connect to it because it is in the indigenous language, and when messages they are being given or transferred to the people in their indigenous languages and through a medium with which they are aware, because these messages they are being given through the folk art, then they are able to create a much lasting impression on the people. So in that sense, when you talk about the various kinds of folk art and how they help in creating a deeper appreciation towards the cultural heritage, and therefore they work in the restoration of the cultural heritage as well. So in that sense, we find that how the culture is being preserved over a period of time. And as I told you earlier as well, the issue of education and awareness is a important concern in all times, and how the folk art was always a popular medium to educate, raise awareness and concerns, and bring about dialogue on important topics like environment, health, human rights, social change, etc. So we find that all these kinds of aspects, they have been very relevant in that sense, and how when one is talking about these kinds of important topics which are concerned with environment, for example, and we have seen in the recent times as well that the concerns with environment have been raised at different levels by people, at not only at the level of the people but at the level of the government and social activists, though environmental activists as well, and how it is very closely associated with the survival of the human beings as well. So we'll talk about all these kinds of aspects which are concerned with the folk art in our next lecture, when we will also not only talk about the importance of folk art, but we'll also talk about the calendar art as well as photography. Till then, thank you very much.